of Education, former Vice President, World Bank, Africa Region, and she's the co-founder of Transparency International. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
And then, right beside her, we've got Mr. Festus Keyamo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and the Director, Strategic Communications for the Buhari Campaign Organization. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
And we do have Dr. Mohammed, the Second Republic lawmaker and a founding member of, he was a founding member of People's Redemption Party in 1979. Thank you for coming on this morning, Dr. Mohammed.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let me start with you, Mr. Keyamo. It's the third anniversary of this government, and so tell us. I mean, we know in 2015, people looked at the economy, they looked at the fight against corruption, they looked at issues and they wanted change. 3 years down the line, are we better off, and how?
Well, I think this government should be judged by the numbers and not by emotions. And if you want to judge the government by numbers and in terms of what has been available to it to work, Nigerians would have been worse off if the government has not taken the steps that it took, especially in respect to the economy. Remember that in 2014, the recession started. So nobody should wake up and because of political reasons say that it was when this government came on board that we slipped into recession. Recession does not start overnight. The recession started in 2014, and that was why at the point of handover in 2015, 24 states were almost bankrupt. They couldn't pay salaries. The federal government was borrowing to pay salaries at that point when they handed over in 2015. The Naira had begun the downward slide, and at the point they handed over, it was 225 Naira to a dollar. So these were clear indices that there was something wrong. We were headed for the bottom of the slope. We were going to crash. Now, it could have been worse. That is why the way I would like to answer that question, if the government did not take the steps that it took. Now, what did the government do? There were two major approaches the government took to halt this slide. First, it needed to spend to reverse the recession. And that is why no matter how much you criticize it, it went a borrowing to invest in critical infrastructure, not to pay salaries. And the critical infrastructure has added the investment in critical infrastructure, which is rail, road, and power, has contributed now. If you see the first quarter report of 2018, the GDP, it has actually rebounded. The economy is on its way to actual revival. The second measure it took is to diversify the economy. Those were the two-pronged approaches the government took. To diversify the economy because it was the over-reliance on oil that brought us to that sorry pass. And what did it do? It invested heavily in agriculture and industry. And I'm sure you know about the rice revolution happening. The rice revolution, 8 rice mills, suddenly, were revived. Fertilizer plants were revived. And right now, as I speak with you, we have moved from 2.5 million metric tons of rice to 4 million metric tons of rice.
So that is in the area of the economy, I mean, which is where, some people will definitely interrogate that.
Absolutely.
But, let us also talk, because your government campaigned on 3 prongs, I believe. Anti-corruption, the economy, and also security. Yes. How would you say it is done in the area of security? Now,
when the campaign started, they were campaigning in 2015, and we all talked about security. Now, what was top on the agenda at that time was the Boko Haram menace. That was top of it. Of course, the Fulani herdsmen crisis had always been there. In fact, in 2014, if you remember, they said the Fulani herdsmen, the armed Fulani herdsmen, were some of the fourth deadliest terrorist group in the world. So it had always been there, but it had not been highlighted as much as it has been highlighted now by people for whatever reason. Okay. But now, in respect of Boko Haram, I'm sure you know that from the Boko Haram controlling more than 14 local governments at that time, hoisting their flags actually, taking complete control of those local governments, there's no one single territory now that is being occupied by the Boko Haram.
We'll also come to you on that, but I need to get Dr. Ezekwesili and Dr. Junaid in on this. Are we better off 3 years down the line, do you think?
We are not. We're not better off. The reason is simply that if you looked at a simple indicator of how better off you are, it would be your income per capita that reduced drastically because of the dent to GDP. And that resulted very much from part of the challenges of the oil price collapse. So there's an extent of it that was outside of the control of the administration. The oil price shortfall meant that we went from about $100 billion of receipts as a result of what we call the commodity super cycle when it hits the highs of about, say, $100 billion to about $50 billion. Now, what the problem is that usually when you have such kind of collapse, you adjust. You adjust as an economic policy approach in order not to get you to the deep end that we eventually found ourselves. So if there's one single thing that I am totally against this administration for, it was that at the time that they could have averted, recession was not inevitable. It was, like you said, certain conditions were heading toward it. But if you did the right economic policy at that time, you would have averted the recession. Many other oil producing and exporting countries managed to avert recession.
But they will argue we're out of it now, aren't we?
But you know what it's cost us? It's cost us considerably. Huge effect on populace. The truth is that we don't yet have poverty numbers from the Bureau for Statistics. When you have the kind of shock that the combination of oil price collapse and poor economic policy response to it occasioned, you would have dropped many more of your citizens into poverty. Considering that the last data that we know of poverty rate from MBS is something in the neighborhood of 60%. You know what that means. You're with hundreds of millions of your citizens poor. You don't want to take any economic action that would improve those numbers because that's disastrous.